Hi, I'm Mordechai Torczyner with Beit Midrash Zichron, and I am presenting the last in our series of Pesach videos. Thank you very much for participating, and thank you to the speakers for making the series possible. I'm not going to talk about Pesach, since by the time this airs, Pesach will be in the rearview mirror. Instead, I'm going to talk about Shmini, the Torah reading for this coming Shabbos. Perhaps the most powerful sensory experience in all of Judaism is the Karban, the sacrifice. Surrounded by the sights and scents of spiritual devotion and ritual sacrifice, we immerse ourselves in an environment which enforces dedication to God. However, on two occasions, that service is actually augmented by a particular sound, the formal recitation of a set of biblical instructions. The first occasion is recorded in our Parsha of Shmini, on the 8th day of the Miluim. The Miluim was the period of dedication of the Mishkan, that sort of mini Beit HaMikdash, mini temple that the Jews traveled with on their way from Egypt into Israel, and then they actually used for the first few centuries in the land of Israel. When they dedicated it, there was a 7-day Miluim period of dedication, followed by the 8th day. And on that 8th day, as explained in the Gemara in Yuma, Daf Hayom Beit, they actually read out biblical instructions as they performed the services of that day. So that's one case in which the Torah requires a specific reading during a sacrifice. The other occasion is Yom Kippur. The annual rituals of the Kohen Gadol are accompanied by a public Torah reading as recorded in the Mishnah in the 7th chapter in Yoma. So here's our question. Why do these particular sacrifices require special Torah readings? So Shimshon Raphael Hirsch suggested the following in his comments to our Torah portion. He said, reciting this portion established these rituals as fulfillment of divine commands. No element was invented by a human heart and its subjective feelings. The totality of these actions was dedicated to a fulfillment of divine command. It's a good explanation, but couldn't you say the same thing for every Karban? Why these specifically? So I think you could defend Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch's approach by drawing on an idea of Rabbi Yehuda Halevi in the Kuzari, where he says that the Jews created the golden calf with intent, full intent, to worship Hashem, to worship God. And their mistake was simply that they chose to worship God in a way that they invented instead of following the divine command for how to relate to God. That's Rabbi Yehuda Halevi's idea in the Kuzari. Well, according to many early authorities, the Mishkan, which we're dedicating in this week's portion, was actually initiated in order to atone for the golden calf. Ramban actually writes that the 8th day of the dedication of the Mishkan was instituted in order to, again, atone for the golden calf. So it makes sense. If the sin of the golden calf was a sin of worshiping God in a way we choose, then on the 8th day, as Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says, we are going to highlight the fact that this is the way God chose. That can work. For that matter, Yom Kippur is the day that we are forgiven for the golden calf. That's what we're commemorating. The initial Yom Kippur was the day when God announced to us via the second set of tablets, the second luchot, that we had been forgiven. So maybe then also it makes sense to say to God, look, we're doing this because you told us to do it. We're not repeating the mistake of the golden calf. So you could say that. But I'd like to offer a different idea, an alternative approach. Perhaps we recite these verses and specifically on these occasions for the dedication of the Mishkan and for Yom Kippur in order to establish a special sense of mission. Since creation, sacred space has been defined by restrictions. You're not allowed to barge across the boundaries of a holy area. Adam and Chava did not enter Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. They were placed there by God. And once they were removed, it was with the institution of an angelic border patrol. No one gets in. Avram and Sarah left Aram to go to Canaan on their own. However, they only enter the Holy Land upon the command of Lech Lecha, go. If you see Ramban in the beginning of Parshas Lech Lecha, he has a nice discussion of that point. Moshe stood atop Har Sinai, atop Mount Sinai, outside of the divine cloud for 6 days, until he was summoned to enter. The Jews did not enter the land of Israel until God invited them in the beginning of the book of Yehoshua, the book of Joshua. Here too, the Kohanim could not enter the Mishkan for their initiation on day 8. The Kohen Gadol may not enter the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur without the invitation expressed in the biblical text describing their roles in their service. You enter divine space not out of a sense of ownership and entitlement and access, but with an awareness that our presence before God is by divine commission alone. The same message of mission pertains in our own lives. Entering even the most mundane space with an arrogant swagger is offensive to God, says the Gemara in Brachos Daf Mem Gimel. Upon entering a synagogue, we recite a sentence from Tehillim, acknowledging that we enter God's house by divine generosity, separate from those who also say Matovu. And as a rule, one may not ascend to the Torah for an aliyah unless called. We have to be invited in. It's a humbling experience to wait for that invitation. It orients us. May we, like the Kohanim of the Miluim, like the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, go about our lives with humble attention to the divine summons which defines our mission, and so merit what Moshe promised, that the glory of God will be revealed upon us. Thank you very much again for participating in the series, and please subscribe to our channel in order to find future videos as we complete them.